Hey Kathy,
Hello.
how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. We got sunshine. It's cold outside, but we got sunshine. But that's spring in Alberta, right?
It is. There's no sunshine here, just a whole lot of wet.
Wet is good. We'll take wet.
We need it.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the last time we met, we were in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
We had just gotten back from our meeting in Grand Prairie.
Yes.
That was the week of the election.
Yes.
That so I guess it's been a few weeks. Oh my. Um, Anyways, and so since that time, we have had a meeting in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a meeting in Medicine Hat. We've
Yep.
had another meeting in Calgary.
Yeah.
Last night we had a meeting in Hill Spring, which for those of you who don't know, it's a tiny village just outside of Waterton, pretty close to Waterton National Park.
Mm-hmm.
Great turnout last night. Fantastic discussion. And we've got some more meetings coming up this week. So you have this week, you have Sherwood Park
Yeah.
Thursday night.
Thursday night, tomorrow night.
I have Cardston Thursday night. Then I have another one in Cardston Tuesday night coming up next week. So that I think that's the 27th.
Yep.
Yes. And then you've got something else going on next week in your area.
I do. I've got Fort Saskatchewan also next week.
Nice.
Yeah. And then another meeting in Calgary for me that I go down to. So
Yeah.
it's coming together. And then there's some other things sort of on the periphery of some collaboration with others that's happening
Hmm.
too for both of us. So that's kind of fun as well.
Yes, things are percolating in the background
They
and
are.
yeah, and I mean we're just seeing the same thing every time, every single meeting of the Alberta Women's Independence Network. I drive home
Hmm.
afterwards. And like last night, I'm driving along the mountains. It's gorgeous. The trumpeter swans are out.
Mm.
It's fantastic. The sun is setting, and it's like my heart is just bursting because I'm like, my goodness, it doesn't get better than this. It doesn't get better than meeting together with your neighbors and you're having discussions and ideas are going back and forth and sometimes there's some disagreements, but it's respectful and it's like, well, let's look at it from this way or this way. And, we're having dessert together, which, whatever. And you walk out of there and everybody's just like, yeah, we're all on board. We
Uh,
totally got this. We can totally do this. And last night I was looking at the group that we had there: farmers, former military, administrators, um, engineers,
mhm.
homemakers, teachers. Like, I was just like, my goodness, as Albertans, we've got this. We've totally got this.
We do. We do.
Yeah.
And isn't it nice to facilitate conversation? You said it. Like,
Hmm.
there's so much noise out there right now
Oh,
within
yeah.
the independence movement, and it's loud, and some of it is really obnoxious. And even out within the independence movement and outside of it.
Oh, yes, we've seen
Outside is
that.
even worse.
Yeah.
We're, how dare we even talk about this? Who do we think we are? And the name calling and I mean, even, Thomas Lukasik and his garbage that he pulled this week. Come on, man. What is that?
Like, do something positive. Take take your energy and your time and do something positive with it.
Well,
Like,
what's funny to me is I looked at that and I thought, what a lost opportunity. Because all this referendum is a democratic process for the Albertans to have a say. The ones that do are just adamant for whatever their reasons are, who are adamant that they do not want to become an independent nation, have every opportunity to check no on that referendum. And if most do that as opposed to say yes, well, we're the losers in it, not them. So
yeah,
why wouldn't you want that instead of I don't even know I
trying
don't
to
even know what to
trying to
call
squash
the stunt.
the democratic process. Yeah. So for those who maybe aren't from Alberta or who just don't know what's going on, like we're starting to see some really strong opposition to the idea of Alberta separation. I think what's happening is that it's got people scared. And
Yeah.
I would venture to say that most people, oh, there's a couple different aspects of this. Most people who are coming out against it either are uneducated to the facts, they don't understand the root cause of the discontent in Western Canada,
Yeah.
or they've got something to gain from the status quo, right?
Yep.
And so like our goal and our hope is that we can message things in a way that allows people to feel safe in finding out the learning the facts,
Yeah.
understanding,
Yeah.
and then being able to just simply make a decision for themselves, and whether it's yes or whether it's no. If you've gone through that process of taking the time to just get yourself educated about it and understand the other side, I don't care which way you vote then, because
Exactly.
you have done your due diligence.
Yeah.
You are have been responsible with the democratic power that you yourself as an individual who will vote on this has.
Hmm.
And I have all respect for that. All respect for that.
Absolutely. And all
Yeah.
of it playing on people's emotions,
Mm,
that's got to stop. That has got to stop. And I had this conversation with someone the other day, and I said there's a legitimate fear on both sides of this yes no referendum. There's the fear on those of us who would vote yes in a heartbeat. There's
mhm.
the legitimate fear that if it doesn't pass, nothing changes. And
Or gets worse.
and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And that's a legitimate fear. And then there's the other side who aren't there yet. And their legitimate fear is that fear of the unknown.
Mm,
Well, what about this? And what about that? And it's almost like analysis by paralysis in some sense. And there's a lot of people out there that are playing on both of those fears to cause
yes.
even more division among Albertans. And we've got to stop letting them do that. And
Well, it's just toxic,
it really is. And
right? It's
sit
toxic
down
on
at,
both sides.
it is. Sit down at the coffee shop, like what I did the other day,
Mhm.
and have a very frank, respectful, calm discussion about it. And I even had one person say, is this private enough? I said, I don't care who hears. I want them to listen. I want them to participate.
Yeah.
What if I'm missing some information? I want to know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's getting old. It's really getting old. People need to just separate.
Well, yeah, it's getting old, but we've got to have enough grit to get through this because there's just going to be more of it. But it is toxic
Bad.
and it's damaging not only to a to people in general, but as individuals to be participating in that. And so, Kathy, I think that's really why people are very accepting when they come to our meetings and they hear our messaging and they realize it's not chest beating, it's not fear mongering, it's nothing like that. It's just like, so it's just like laying it out
Yep.
and then let's discuss it. And then
Yep.
you leave and you come to your own conclusion, right?
Yep.
As to how you are going to vote when you're given the opportunity. So I think maybe, I don't know, we got to come up with a name for this podcast or this video episode. Maybe something like it's all about education, or I don't know, something like that. We'll come up with something. But you have put together some amazing resources, and just full disclosure, I haven't seen all of this. I took a quick glance at it. um, so you've come up with this fantastic PowerPoint that we're going to go through, and why don't you just jump right in and kind of tell us like what is it about, and we'll just go through it.
Yeah. Well, when we're doing these meetings, people are very visual, right? Like we have our little piece of paper that's got the maps on there and the numbers, and that's fantastic. And then there's a lot of other information that like supporting information that we share at these
Right.
meetings. And sometimes in the smaller groups, that's really easy to hang on to because the discussion kind of follows that. And then in the larger groups, it can sometimes be a little bit more challenging because not everybody gets to say something or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what if I put kind of our conversation, the discussion that we have on PowerPoint, and then
Hmm.
people just have it. They can go through, they can fast forward through all of this preamble that we're doing right now, and then just go through the PowerPoint that will show a lot of the things that we're talking about, and then people will be able to take that extra time to study it for themselves and decide.
Love it.
Ah,
All right. So should we go ahead and share it then?
we should.
I think I've got it here. There we go. Yes. All right.
There we go. Great. So I called it How Did We Get Here? A lot of people don't know, I didn't know Alberta's political history. For the longest time, I don't ever recall it being taught. I remember learning a lot about Ontario and Quebec. I don't remember learning about Alberta when I was in school. And so I got to have some fun going down this little lane. And to figure out how we got here, of course, we've got to take a look at the past in order to see what our future could hold. We got to go back
Right.
before we can go forwards. And so to do that, if you go to the next slide, we can go way back. And 1885 is when the complaints were already well underway. The people of the Northwest are allowed but a degree more control of their affairs than the serfs of Siberia.
Oh my. Okay, I've
That,
never seen that quote before.
yeah, I came across this one the other day. That was the sentiment here decades before we came into Confederation.
1885. So I'm thinking about like, because I live right in the furthest southwest corner
Yeah,
of Alberta. And there's an interesting history here with irrigation and how that came to be and how it was an integral part of the Dominion of Canada's plan
yeah.
to be able to populate Alberta, that type of thing. But my 1885, that would have been right when they were just barely starting, because a lot of the ranches around here, they generally have 1890 something is when they were started.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Wow.
Right. It goes right back to then. Frank Oliver, he was the publisher of Edmonton's first newspaper. There's
Okay.
a chunk of downtown Edmonton named after him that they're trying to rename now because, well, reasons, I guess. But like they're trying to rename everything.
Of
And
course.
yeah, I just thought that like this was fascinating that it goes right back, way back, that there was already this sentiment around here and this irritation that we were being compared to the serfs of Siberia.
Interesting.
Now, if you go to the next slide, we're going to put a little bit of icing on this cake.
I
The original elbows up. And click on
thought
one
it
more.
was a hockey term.
Well, I don't know.
No?
I
Okay.
think it even predates hockey by the sounds of it. Just click one more time and you'll see we desire, every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and the workshops of Eastern Canada, and to contribute in every way to its prosperity. That was the Minister of Interior, Sir Clifford Sifton, said that in 1904.
Yep.
So this is the foundation that this province was built on. And a lot of our natural tenacity and grit and entrepreneurial spirit, it's really tough to admit that this is what that we built all of that on this foundation.
Right? Just,
So
and it hasn't stopped,
it really
clearly.
it hasn't stopped. And so our asks that are not unreasonable, they actually go way back. If you go to the next slide and start clicking through that one.
Oh, here we go. There we
Oh, there
go.
you go.
All right.
Yeah, so back in before 1905, before we were confederated, just keep clicking, Angela, and all the points are going to come up for you. There were some lawyers and businessmen here in Alberta, and they wanted more autonomy. That was the word they
Mm.
used. They wanted some more autonomy. So Premier Haultain was the guy at the time. He was tasked with figuring out a solution. Now, Premier Haultain was the premier of all that space that you see there, all the districts, Saskatchewan, Assiniboia, Alberta, and
Okay.
Alaska. He covered all of that. And so the fine folks in Ontario said, all right, well, go do something to shut these folks in Alberta up. We're sick of listening to them. Figure it out. So he did. He went back and took the districts in that area and he said, you know what? Let's create the province of Buffalo. And so that's, if we hear like the Buffalo Declaration of a few years ago,
Right.
that's where that comes from, or the Buffalo Party that's now the Republican Party. Well, that's where that comes from, is that this was the original idea. Let's just take that chunk and we're going to create a province of Alberta and Saskatchewan, well, take Alberta and Saskatchewan, make it into the province of Buffalo, and then they would have local representation, a local
Mm,
government to be able to manage and deal with and vote for themselves and all of that. And yeah, local representation. So if you keep clicking, we're going to find out what Ottawa's response was to that.
okay. And this map is from 1898.
1898, yeah. So
Very interesting.
this is what the Dominion of Canada looked like. And so what you're actually looking at is Ontario and Quebec. We're now part of it. New Brunswick, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and Manitoba, I think, were the first four that
Okay.
created the Dominion. And then everybody came in after that. But I'm gonna talk about that in a couple more slides. But we
All
were looking
right.
at local representation. So what was the response to this ask? Well, of course, it went where all great ideas go to die, and Ottawa said, no, not
Hmm.
happening. No way, Jose. And oh, sorry, that's my phone. So what Ottawa actually did, if you keep clicking through, they grabbed an eraser, a pencil, and a ruler and took the map and they created Alberta and Saskatchewan. They put that nice line
Mm.
right down the middle, and that's when we start to see these changes in the boundaries. And the reason for that is because they knew that that was, they were advertising that area as the last best west. And that was kind of our original boom, if you will, where people were coming from everywhere, predominantly the States, freedom-loving
Yep.
Americans were coming up here, but also some like me, Germany, Ukraine, all over Europe coming back. That's where mine are predominantly from. But anyways, and then of course the US. And so the folks in Ottawa said, you know what? If that gets overpopulated and they've got this big land mass, that balance of power that we just talked about a couple slides ago is going to get unbalanced and not be in our
Right.
favor anymore. So they made these two provinces, sliced it down the middle, and thought, well, if we do that, then we can just sort of divide and conquer. So that was the purpose there. So then if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show the order that that everybody came into Confederation. So if you click again, so British Columbia came in and then over to more of the maritime provinces, so Nova Scotia,
Okay.
because New Brunswick is already here. And then
Yeah.
and these guys negotiated their way in, right? Those two provinces, they got to negotiate. Let's not forget that. And then
Right.
Manitoba also sort of got to negotiate. It was a little bit heated because Ottawa was still a little sore about the whole Louis Riel thing, and
Sure.
they didn't
The
like
separatists. Yeah.
that, right? So yeah, there was some negotiation there, and then if we keep going, you'll see that Newfoundland, actually the last province to come into Confederation, they too negotiated
Yeah.
their way in, and we did.
Yeah. We did not negotiate.
We did not. We were literally confederated. We were told this is how it's going to be. Sit down, shut up.
Yeah.
Pretty much it. So Albertans, we don't take kindly to that kind of nonsense. And we haven't ever since, in fact. And no matter what we've done, it's never made it any better. So then if you go to the next slide, we're going to see what the outcome of those negotiations or lack of accomplished within the Senate.
Hmm.
We've got two levels, or well, we've got two houses in our parliament. We've got the House of Commons and we've got the Senate, the upper and the lower. And in the Senate, you can see those numbers across the map of how many senators each province has. And this was determined right from the beginning. So Ontario and Quebec thought they each needed 24. And then they gave the maritime provinces each 10, and then PEI got 4, and Newfoundland got 6. Remember, now we always are told this is, representation by population, but those numbers
Well,
together,
they were kind of guessing at that time because there wasn't a lot of population in some of those areas,
there
right?
really wasn't, and they were trying to at that time as well kind of break us up into sections of the
Right.
country. So like that's why you see common 24, 24, 24, 24, and then 6 for Newfoundland. But they were trying to kind of break us up into regions. And then when we came in, they thought, well, you know what, Manitoba's got 6, BC's got 6, they can each have 6. We'll continue on with that 24. And then when the territories were sorted out, they each got 1.
Right.
And again, we're told that this is all supposed to be representation by population.
Hmm.
However, if we go to the next slide, we're going to see some more numbers come up. These little black
Hmm.
numbers underneath are the seats in Parliament.
Yeah, in the House of Commons. Okay.
Or
Yeah.
in the House of Commons. Yeah, thank you. The seats in, I need to change that, Senate, and I need to say
Oh,
House of Commons.
Parliament's fine too. It's the same. I believe it's the same thing, is it not? I don't know.
It is, yeah, interchangeable for sure. Um, yeah, so these are the seats that we have across the country
Mm-hmm.
in the House of Commons. And as you can see, there's a bigger amount on one side than there are on the other.
Yeah.
Again, people are going to say, well, but Kathy, and Angela, it's representation by population. But is it?
Hmm.
I don't think so. So if we go through here, just start clicking and we're going to see some numbers coming up. So in the Senate, I just took a handful of provinces and showed you how many people in that province there are per senator.
Oh my. Okay. Wow.
Right?
Like I thought Quebec to Newfoundland and PEI was a big jump, but okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So it isn't. Now, if we go to the members of parliament or in the House of Commons, these are our MPs. It's also not the same.
And we're not supposed to be upset about this?
We're not supposed to be upset about this. We're not supposed to be upset about this. Now, Angela, you have a great explanation. If we look at Prince Edward Island,
Yeah.
right? Like just under 45,000 per senator and just under like same number for their MPs. How come?
Well, okay, yeah, it's because the senatorial clause, we start off with the population. That's the very first thing. They call it the population quotient.
Yeah,
When they're calculating the number of seats in the House of Commons or the Parliament, they start off with the population quotient. And I actually looked it up yesterday because somebody on X was like blabbing off about it. And it's 121,819. That's the base number per house in the or per seat in the House of Commons. So they start with that, okay?
yeah,
And then they, of course, they look at each province's population and how it kind of fits into that. Okay, so now then you get your base number of seats. So Alberta, BC, and Ontario, their numbers, their seats in the House of Commons are based 100% strictly on that population quotient. Okay.
okay,
But other provinces have two different clauses applied to their population quotient. So there's the grandfather clause,
yeah,
which generally hasn't really been used. Although it was used in this last election when Quebec should have lost a seat. So rather than having 78 seats, because they're losing population, they should have gone down to 77. But they threw such a fit about it that the House of Commons agreed.
yeah,
Okay, fine. We're going to change the grandfather clause. So now Quebec will not lose seats. Okay, fine.
yeah,
So they kept their seats. There's 78 still. And then there's the senatorial clause, which states that no province will have fewer seats in the House of Commons than they do the Senate. So that's why PEI has 4.
That's right.
They have 4 House of Commons seats and 4 Senate seats, even though their population comes nowhere near to being able to support that.
That's right.
And the same thing with, I believe it's New Brunswick.
Yeah, if
Anyways,
you
but
go on
yeah,
the next slide, if you go to the next slide, you'll see again those numbers.
okay,
And if you look at the maritime
there you go.
provinces, you see exactly what Angela's saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a senatorial clause, the grandfather clause, that actually skews the idea of representation by population.
Yep. Yeah, so this is when people begin with that argument, well, it's we're represented by our population. No, we're not. And there are the numbers to show it. And I think for most of us within the independence movement, we don't even care to be represented by our population anymore because the way the government is structured, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't work for us regardless. So
Well, the Senate is a completely different mess, right?
it really, really is. It really is. And we don't even have to go very far back to outline some of the grievances that and legitimate grievances that Alberta has had. So you can click, I think I've got about 10 or 12 points on here. So in the 70s, the Independent Alberta Association was created.
Mm.
And there's a lot of stuff that goes way back there. And then, of course, the NEP, the infamous NEP. And then when Mulrooney came in, of course, oh, okay, the West is going to be okay because Mulrooney's in now. Well, he didn't end it right away. He kept that NEP still going. So he was
And
no help.
we have to remember that when we have politicians going to Parliament and saying, oh, yeah, we're going to fix it for the West, and then they take their time or they simply don't, there's a very good reason for that. And it's called 122 seats in Ontario and 78 in Quebec. They
Yep,
absolutely must pander to those votes if they want to be reelected.
that's exactly right.
So, and yeah, Mulroney, I mean, we've seen this over and over and over for decades now, right?
Yeah. Canadian Wheat Board. It was established in 1935. It was privatized in 2015. Think back to who was here in 2015 in the House of Commons. And by the way, the Saudis own 50.1%,
Absurd.
right? Because
Yeah.
why not? Equalization, of course, now a household word. You know, I don't think, I've often said this, the dumbest thing Trudeau did, and the list is long, but the dumbest thing that he
Yeah, I
did
want to hear that.
is screw over Albertans so bad when he came in 2015 and put us out of work in conjunction with Notley because we don't do well sitting at home doing nothing. I don't think any of us even knew what equalization was.
I didn't.
No, until then. And now we got nothing to do. We're all laid off. We can't collect EI because we don't qualify for it because those rules are different too, by the way, but we'll go down that tangent in another day.
Yeah.
And so we all start researching and then can't understand why the independence movement exploded even after Kenny got in. That didn't placate it at all. Well, because we were beginning to understand how our Constitution is written and how unbalanced it is. Equalization is a great example. Oh, by the way, talking about having to pander to the East for votes. Most people don't know that it was Harper who changed the equalization formula to include 50% of our resource revenues and not Quebec's. Just a little nugget for you. Just a little nugget.
It's enough to make me nuts.
Right? So the West wanted in, the West was in, but we're going to charge you for it. We got an entry fee of 50% of our resource revenues as part of the equalization. That was our entry fee into the House Commons.
Well, and the really eye-opening part, and somebody brought this up at the Grand Prairie meeting, and I had heard, different numbers kind of tossed around, but the way that it was explained here. So if you have somebody who earns $70,000 a year in Alberta,
Yeah.
and you know how every time you get a paycheck, it has that little thing on the bottom, federal taxes,
Yeah.
and then the amount that's been taken off of that paycheck in federal taxes. Um, $700 to $900 a month of those taxes that are taken off of Albertans' paychecks
Yep.
stay in the East. They never come back to Alberta in the form of services or funding or anything for our programs. They stay in the East. So
Mhm.
each one of us might as well be writing out a check, dear Quebec, $700 a month. There you go. So that you can have your subsidized daycare and your highly subsidized secondary education for your students and blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on, right?
Well, it really does. And what people I've come to understand, what people believe is they think that all of that money comes from the taxes that we pay to the province, and then the province pays that out. They think that the province sends a check to Ottawa. But no, no, no. That comes off that little FEDTAX line on your pay stub.
Yeah,
That's why we can't just not pay it. I mean, and
right.
we can't not pay it. It's they did it so that we're screwed, basically.
Yeah, and the rub is not because the argument is, well, we're all paying the same federal tax rate. Yes, we are, but we're not all receiving equal services that we have paid into. It's not how much we paid into it. It's how much is actually coming back to our province to fund our services that our population needs here.
Yeah.
That right there is the imbalance.
Well, it is, and we're funding the very folks that are trying to shut us down. Like,
This is
let that
well, this
sink
is what
in.
happens. Well, that's what happens when you create a culture of dependence. It's basically a welfare culture because
Hmm.
they haven't earned that money, and yet they are receiving services for things that they have not earned.
That's right.
And it's like what Danielle Smith said the other day when she was kind of laying out the list of changes that Albertans would need.
Yeah.
And she made the point like, hey, we have no problem helping out smaller provinces, and I don't. Smaller
Yeah.
provinces who maybe don't have the resources or don't have the population to create the tax base needed to provide, services that are needed.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely no way in hell that we should be subsidizing Ontario and Quebec.
Nope.
Absolutely not.
Or
There's
BC for that matter.
or BC, there's absolutely no reason. They
Yeah.
have tons of resources they could develop if they wanted to. We could count their hydroelectricity into the equalization formula, but we don't.
But we don't.
Not at the same rate that we do with Alberta's
That's right.
resources. So, like, no. Yeah, you're so right, man. They've given us way too much time to think about this.
But it's maybe good because here we are.
Yeah,
It's 10 years later, and the numbers just keep growing of the people who are learning this stuff and saying, yeah, just doesn't really pass the smell test and the math ain't mathin'.
right.
But speaking of math, let's keep going. Cartels,
Yeah.
nothing but, nothing but cartels. And it drives me bananas that our producers here of our food are held back because of this.
And we're all paying for it.
And we're all paying for it. And then if you keep going, we get to talk about C6948 carbon tax, billions in canceled projects, all the things that everybody knows. And don't believe for 1 minute that Carney's going to do anything to change that. Because he
No,
is not. He is not. Um,
no.
there's just no way. There's just no way. And then we can keep going, and I alluded to it earlier, the EI rule changes that favor the East over the West,
It's
which
basically geographic discrimination, is what it is.
it is. Like they purposely want to peg one side against the other. That is, they're littered, like, it's
Yes.
criminal.
And
It's
they're
criminal.
pandering. And they are pandering. They know where that vote base comes from that they need to get reelected.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've already
Exactly.
discussed that.
And then the
Wow.
other thing that we subsidize, of course, is the Canada Pension Plan, which is really
Yes.
frightening by like
Okay.
a lot.
Our email that we sent out last night
Yes.
focused on CPP versus APP. Now, I'll be honest, I've wanted an APP, like an Alberta pension plan, because I really believe in the principle that the closer that government is to the people, the more accountable they are, the
Yeah.
easier it is to hold them accountable. I mean, the CPP is like 3,400 kilometers away. I don't have a financial advisor that lives more than 50 kilometers away from me, except
Mhm.
for the guys that are managing my retirement fund with the CPP. But yeah, it was very interesting watching a bunch of videos and doing some reading and learning about the CPP. And I'm telling you, people don't know. People don't know
They
what
don't.
it is and what it is not. They assume that it's, oh, my money's in a mutual fund and it's growing and I'm going to be able to pull out my money. Sorry, it ain't your money. It goes into that giant Ponzi scheme pool, and you are very limited on exactly how much you get to pull out, no matter how much it grows.
Exactly. Exactly. And that drives me nuts when I hear the people saying, well, it gets 10%. Well, you don't see it.
You don't get that 10%. You are limited. It maxes out $1,400 a month, less than $1,400 a month.
So let's just dream for a second. Think about if we had an independent Alberta, we were our own country, and we still wanted to provide some sort of a public pension to
Yes,
people because there are some people that they're just maybe not very good with money, and we want to make sure that everybody's looked after in their old age. So, okay,
fair enough.
we have said, yep, we will make sure that there's a public pension. Well, imagine having a public pension that grew over time, not only because of the contributions that you put in, but because you get to realize that percentage growth back. So if it makes 2% a year, 3% a year, 4% a year, a half a percent a year, whatever, that is added on. It has nothing to do with how many hours you worked, how much money you made, nothing. It has everything to do with how that portfolio is performing. Then that's what you get back in return. And then here's another thing. This EI drives me crazy. Call it unemployment insurance. That's what it is. It's unemployment, not employment. You don't need employment insurance because you're already employed. You need unemployment insurance. Like, think about this properly. Anyways, go back to calling it what it should be. Well, how many of us have paid into it for decades and never used it?
Right.
It just vanished into thin air and supported somebody else. Wouldn't it make more sense if you really firmly believe that you need to have this cushion? Okay, so put it into the pot, put it into the same pot as the pension. And if whatever portion of that that you didn't use, why can't you get it back upon retirement?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, now there's a thought.
Right? We
Yeah.
can make this, we can do it. Why can't we? Don't tell me we can't. Of course we can. It's our country. We can do whatever we want to.
And this is why I love this whole discussion, is because we can throw out all kinds of ideas. We can argue the merits back and forth
Yeah,
and come up with something way better than what we've got right now. It wouldn't be
exactly.
that hard to come up with something better than what we got right
Well, yeah, like the bar
now.
isn't very, very high now. Um, oh, Ottawa also likes to ignore our democratically elected senators. They're not elected, actually. We try. Alberta gives it a good go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they're actually not elected. They're appointed by
Yep.
whoever is in government at the time, and Trudeau appointed a lot of them.
95 out of 105.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yep.
So,
9 years.
yeah. So even when people were all excited thinking that the Conservatives were going to win federally, the fact of the matter is the way that the government structure is set up, it wouldn't have mattered. It would not have mattered because all the bills that go through the House of Commons have to also go through the Senate. And then once the Senate approves whatever it is, then they go back to the House of Commons and then they're passed. It's supposed to be the checks and balances, and the Senate is supposed to be the sober second thought. But when the Senate is stacked with all kinds of people that are only going to be favorable to the government of the day, well, that's not a sober second thought. And
No.
when they're appointed and not elected by the folks that they're supposed to be representing, that's a dictatorship. Like, that's not.
Well, okay, so this last week, we saw our latest Alberta Senator, Christopher Wells,
Yeah.
issuing threats on X against Albertans who want to separate.
Mhm.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Really? Well, and my response was, well, what do we expect from a guy who's appointed until he's 75 or dead and will be receiving $150,000 a year
Yeah.
to basically do squat? Why wouldn't he issue threats?
He's got much
That's
to lose.
He's got a lot to lose. Damn that he'd have to go back to work again. Oof.
Well, I don't think he'd be hireable. Not around here, anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. Ugh,
That's for sure. So that's
gross.
also a problem. Numerous politically induced recessions. In
Yes.
my lifetime, Angela, in your lifetime, we're very close to the same age, there have been at least five, not economically induced, not because of cycles, politically induced recessions, even depressions. They just try to fudge the numbers so it doesn't show specific to Alberta. That's
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
Garbage.
And
There's no
I
reason
think
for that.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is the NEP in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Our family lost our home over that. My parents basically mailed in the keys to the bank and walked away from that.
Wow.
And our neighborhood cleared out.
Yeah.
It, as a 9 and 10-year-old kid, that was extremely confusing, extremely destabilizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't that the truth, right? Like most of us that are in that generation, um, my parents didn't, well, my parents were actually in the middle of a divorce and then I lost my mom right after that. But even in the midst of all of that chaos, you still knew like there was a heaviness
Oh, absolutely.
in the house.
Well,
And
yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt we all felt it, whether
yeah,
we understood what the cause of it was.
yeah,
Going back and reading Michael Wagner's books and understanding exactly what the NEP was and remembering, like, okay, that makes sense why half of my grade 5 class just kind of disappeared
yeah,
because they were losing their homes as well and they were leaving the area because there was no more work.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that didn't need to be. There was no reason for that.
Yeah, it was straight up
None.
greed. Straight
None.
up greed. Yeah.
So there,
Interesting.
right? We wouldn't be at the mercy of those political decisions anymore as our own country. We really
Right.
wouldn't.
Well, and because like we all saw this on the convoy. If you wanted to make a statement to Ottawa, you've got to get in a truck and drive in the middle of the dead of the Canadian prairie winter all the way to Ottawa to get their attention, only to be abused when you get there, right?
That's right.
Um, if Alberta's national government, meaning we're our own nation now, if they
Yeah,
tried that, well, I can get in my car and I can go protest and it's only 5 hours away, right? Like we
that's
can
right.
hold, it's so much easier to hold those politicians accountable for their decisions when they are your local neighbors, basically, compared to 3,400 kilometers away.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the last point that I have on this slide is that in Ottawa, they intentionally like to keep our dollar low because that helps the manufacturing side of life over there, right? The East is mostly manufacturing. We're mostly producing over here.
Yeah, yeah.
So it makes it better for them, but it does not make it better for us.
Interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, very good. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then, of course, this document is useless. We found that out.
Yeah, we found that. Yeah, they don't. Rule of law.
Rule of law. That is
No.
nothing. Nothing. Up to interpretation, apparently. Who
In
knows?
in many ways.
In many ways. And then if we,
Ah,
right, this is our favorite picture.
the milch cow.
The milch cow, like even in 1915, before equalization, before all the cartels were in place, before so much of that was not there yet, before the NEP, before all
Mm,
of it already, Albertans were saying, no, enough is enough. Enough is
yeah,
enough.
they recognized it. They recognized it for what it was.
They really did. They really did. However, even back in Alberta's early days, we have some heroes among us.
Hmm.
Ladies, specifically.
Ooh, okay.
So, and this is one of the reasons why Angela and I like to target the ladies. We kind of forget that we have opportunities, big opportunities to be powerhouses in some cases. And Alberta is no exception to that. No exception at all. We've got our famous five and that's what they were termed, was Alberta's famous five.
Mm-hmm.
These gals wanted to vote. They wanted to go to post-secondary education. They wanted to do all the things that the boys were doing. And of course, they were not allowed to do all of those things, but that didn't stop them. That didn't stop them from fighting for those rights. And they are rights to vote, and there are rights to go get an education. There are rights to be persons under the law. That's what they were after, was to be acknowledged and recognized as persons under the law. And after several years, a ton of sacrifice, both personally to themselves, to their families. I mean, imagine what their husbands and kids must have gone through during that time.
And that's what we have to remember. And that's why we say we target Alberta women and their supporters,
Yeah,
because we understand that if there's a young mom that's come into a meeting, there's a father at home putting those kids in bed.
that's
And
right.
we honor that. We
That's right.
100% support and honor that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we also, and I have this conversation with a lot of people all the time. If you are going to get into this space in a forward facing way, like Angela and I have chosen to do for the last several years,
Mm-hmm.
your kids need to be ready to read stuff about you that isn't true.
Yeah.
And to have
I saw that on Twitter this last week. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm known as the blah, blah, blah.
right?
I'm good with it.
And if you have a very strong relationship with your kids, it's going to be fine.
Yeah,
Um, you'll be okay. But that's hard on our kids.
it
It's
can be. Yeah.
devastating on our kids and
Yeah.
and devastating on our spouses and stuff. And so these women, they paid a high price
Mm-hmm.
so that we could be recognized as persons under the law. And one of them became a doctor. One of them, right the next election that was able to run in, became a politician. And threw those boys a curveball, that's for sure, when they showed up. But didn't matter because they had fought for that right and they took that right and they did something with it. Now, my favorite is Roberta McAdams. She was actually in the war. She was overseas. And at when the election was happening at that time, they decided that the soldiers and all of those others that were out there supporting the soldiers on our behalf needed representation as well. So she put her name forward to be that MLA MP. I have to double check myself on that. I can't remember which level it was. But
Hmm.
she said this was her campaign poster right here. Soldiers and nurses from Alberta, you will have 2 votes in the forthcoming election under the Alberta military representation. Give 1 vote to the man of your choosing and the other to the sister. She won. She won.
Interesting.
Yes. So, ladies, I'm telling you, it's time for us to rise up.
Yeah.
It's time for us to rise up. The foundation is here. We've got some very strong women to be able to rise and stand on their shoulders, if you will. We can look back and a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but they believed in this or they believed in that. You know what? Every generation has their something.
Yeah.
That is
Oh,
just right.
I'm
That's
getting
the nature
emotional
of it.
here. Looking at these women and knowing what we've been through the last few years and how ugly it can get. And I'm prepared for it to get much uglier. But looking at these women, man, I just feel strength. I
Right?
just feel strength. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew, it's current crazy. That's
But it,
amazing, Kathy. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they did. They fought hard. If we go to the next slide, persons under the law. In fact, in our legislature, there's
Mhm.
a whole wing dedicated to all those ladies. It's beautiful. It's
Field
beautiful.
trip coming up.
Oh, when we were, and I guess maybe I should have put the picture in here too, but when I went, so all of the presidents of the CAs, of the UCP CAs, we got a guided tour.
Okay, yeah.
One day it was wonderful. It was so good. And so all of us ladies, they had us a picture in front of it. And it says persons under the law, and then it's got all their pictures, and it was a pretty special moment. And I'm no feminist, Angela, you're no feminist. Like,
Not
don't get us
feminist.
wrong, guys. That's
No.
not what this is about. But it's pretty touching when we get to see that and knowing that if it hadn't been for those ladies, we might not even be having this conversation right now,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they
Wow.
knew that change only comes through the ballot box. It
Yep.
really does. So when somebody says my vote doesn't matter, I'm just going to be very blunt. That's bullshit. It does matter. And if you don't think it matters, look at all the recounts that the Liberals are trying to do right now just to get a majority in the House of Commons. So yes, your vote matters. Don't
Yeah.
think that it doesn't. By the way, your opinion matters as well. Don't think that it doesn't. But
Yeah.
change only comes through the ballot box. Whether you want to see this referendum go or not, you have an obligation to go and have your say, but make sure it's educated. And
Yeah.
that's why Angela and I do all of this stuff. We're already convinced, and we're not trying to convince you. We just want we just want to make sure you have all the facts without the emotion. Remember, again, I'm going to say it. These ladies suffered greatly so that we have the right to vote in this referendum, that we have that privilege to be able to decide for ourselves. So let's not waste it. Let's not waste it. It doesn't mean you have to be forward facing like Angela and I are. That's not what it means. It
No.
does mean you need to get out there, you need to read, you need to learn, you need to find out for yourselves, and then you need to show up on voting day when that time comes. And like these ladies, the last point that says, once that right was secured, they ran. They ran with it.
Love
And
it.
I think that's amazing. I just think that is absolutely amazing. They were persons under the law. And so the very last slide, we've got a, oh, no, not quite. Second last slide, sorry. Government system. Let's review that. It's structure, it's by design. Okay, so guys, I want you to understand, the guys that are listening to this, it's by design. You can't fix it. You can't fix it. Ladies, you can't make it work no matter how hard you try. You can't.
It was designed like that.
It is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Full-scale change can't and won't happen from within. It just won't. However, we can look at it. Other provinces are never going to agree to change. And when we have our meetings with these ladies, we walk through why that is. They're not going, they just, all the 7 out of 10 provinces, making up 50% of the population, have to agree to open up the Constitution and make a change. Have fun trying to find 7 of them, 7 premiers. We might be able to get 50% of the population. I suppose there's a small chance of that, but have fun trying to get 7 premiers to go ahead. They
Well,
won't.
and it's apparent in our meetings when we ask that question, okay, which 7?
Yeah,
30 seconds, everybody has come to the same conclusion. Not going to happen.
it is not going to
Not
happen.
going to happen. All right.
No. And so that shows us this is a political problem that requires a political solution. It has to be political. So, ladies, it's time. It is time. We have got to go to the last slide. It's a referendum. It's time for that referendum. And it's time, click one more time, for the referendum on Alberta's independence.
Yeah.
It really is. If anybody that's listening to this has any questions, you want clarification on something, if Angela and I don't already know the answer, we will work until we find the answer. There are so many resources out there for us to go on. We go follow Michael Wagner. Like, these are our 3 that we always keep, well, 4 actually, that we always keep pointing people to. Michael Wagner, first and foremost, amazing historian. He's going to walk you through all of that. Keith Wilson, very knowledgeable. Bruce Party, also very knowledgeable. Those 2 gentlemen are constitutional lawyers. They know what they're talking about. And they're not, like, their careers are on the line, so they're not going to be trying to snow you. And then, of course, Corey Morgan has been doing amazing videos that really
Absolutely.
break things down. So at the end of the day, there's no excuse for anybody to say, oh, I didn't know.
No, there's so much information and opportunity out there. And really, I mean, like we share some of these videos and clips and stuff from these gentlemen that we just mentioned in our newsletter. And it's it's a matter of opening up the newsletter, click on the link, you're washing dishes, you're making beds, you're at work, you're on your computer, wherever you are, whatever you're doing,
Yeah,
and it's in the background and you're hearing it and you're learning. It's a matter of 30 seconds to open up that email and click on that link.
that's right.
It's so simple, and yet we can feel so confident in the knowledge that we have in small and simple ways, right?
Well, exactly, because as we continue to go through this journey, it's that knowledge that's going to carry us through. There's going to be hard days. There's going to be tough times. There's going to be uncertainty. It just is. You can't get away from that.
And it describes like what we're going through right now. Uncertainty, some hard times, some tough days. Yeah, okay.
Kind of describes the last 150 odd years.
Yeah, but now we have a light at the end of the tunnel.
Isn't that awesome?
Brilliant.
I
Yes.
love that.
Kathy, you did such a great job. Ah, I
Thank
love it.
you.
I
Thank
love
you.
it. Thank you so much.
Oh, awesome. I'm happy to do that. And we'll see. Maybe we'll get a bigger like when I put out I guess it just needed to get to the right channels, but when I put out the invitation to come to the house tomorrow, I didn't expect 4 people, and there's 19 coming. I don't know where I'm putting them all, like I said. But anyways, we had to stop that, which tells me, okay, there are people out there that want to hear this, and I'm kind of tempted to maybe just take a bit of a jump and go like rent something bigger or something and see.
Well, and that's what we're doing in Cardston next week. Like this week, we have some meeting in someone's house, which is great. This person has
Yeah.
already hosted 2 other meetings, very successful meetings already, and she's like, "Bring it on!" Like, okay, great. And then next week, we're just going to give it a shot. We've rented the seniors hall in Cardston, and we'll see what happens. There is most definitely an appetite, and like you said, sometimes it just takes like finding the right people, and that's why we are the Alberta Women's Independence Network, because it's about networking and finding those right people and just kind of spreading out the message that way. So yeah.
That's right. Well, and you know what? Maybe in closing, Angela, we should review, because we get asked this all the time,
Hmm.
why we decided to set this up the way that we did.
um well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of reasoning going back and forth as you, it's about a 3 week period. You and I were kind of throwing ideas back and forth, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So as the separation sentiment kind of begins or continues to grow, we're going to see more and more opposition to it, and more. Oh, what's the word? It's very intentional, planned opposition.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's another word for it that I can't really think of right now, but
Filtration.
infiltration is part of it, all those different things. And so we looked at not only our experience with the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta, but also looking at Corey Morgan and Michael Wagner's books and how they have documented all the different political parties that have come, into play throughout the decades, and how they always get taken down. And the minute that you form a party or a group, a public group with a board,
Mm-hmm.
you have opened yourself up to be infiltrated and taken down from within without you even knowing what's going on. And so that's why our group is kind of a nothing burger. It's, I mean, we had to put a name on it. We had to form some kind of organization, right? But all it is ladies and their supporters getting together over coffee or wine or juice or whatever and having a discussion.
That's it. We're just talking, and good luck shutting us up. So
Bring
that's
it.
what this is about. It really is. So that's what this is about. When you see an invitation come your way and it's got a win on it, you're not going to be asked for, to volunteer for this or go over there and do that.
No,
If we
we
do
don't sell
end up,
memberships.
we don't sell memberships, we don't, and at best, we might ask you for a couple dollars to help pay for some place that we've rented. That'll
Yeah,
be,
I mean, yeah, we have the toonie bin instead of the loony bin. We call it the toonie bin. It's like
yeah,
toss a toonie in if you want to help pay for the hall.
yeah,
That's it.
that'll be all.
Mhm.
That'll be all. Awesome.
Yeah.
Angela, I love spending time with you.
Kathy, whoops, here I'm shaking my thing. You did such an awesome job. And I do love these conversations too. And things are just, I mean, it's happy.
It
Things are
is.
just taking off. It's like, it's so overwhelming. It's kind of blown me away. The response that we've received, and yet so gratifying, and also just very humbling, very, very humbling as well. Just, oh man,
Yeah.
so feeling so blessed for this opportunity to just hang out with fellow Albertans and have these discussions and learn together, and feel of that strength and that grit,
Yeah.
and yeah, looking towards the future together. It's amazing.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Kathy.
You're welcome. We'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely. Take care.